Again, these are going to be posted online. So Ashley, if you could go ahead and hit record, we'll start that. But again, thanks everybody for coming out today. We're going to do Rule 12 today. Again, this is kind of a continuing series you're doing every Monday, or Rules Mondays. They're always posted online within a day or two of doing this. So if you're watching after the fact, we meet 9 o'clock Mountain Time every Monday to go over one rule in depth. And this Monday, we're going over Rule 12, which is bunkers. It's got its own rule, and we're going to cover that pretty in depth today. I don't believe this will take as long as the past few, 8, 9, and 11. A lot going on in these rules. This one, it's very confined to bunkers. There's a lot going on, but it's a very specific area of the course, and that's what we're going to cover today. So let's get started. So when we look at Rule 12, it's divided into 3 sections, right? So in 12.1, we look at when the ball is in the bunker. In 12.2, we look at, playing a ball in a bunker. And then in 12.3, it covers specific rules for relief for a ball in a bunker. Really, 12.1 and 12.2 is where we're going to spend 99% of our time. We're going to touch on 12.3. That's kind of a catch-all. It's not really rule-making necessarily. It's saying, here are 3 rules that apply when a ball is in a bunker also. So if those situations ever happen, you really wouldn't ever go to 12.3. And if you did, it would kick you out and say, okay, for an unplayable in a bunker, go to Rule 19. So 12.3 is not what we're going to spend a lot of time on. We're going to spend a lot more time on 12.1 and 12.2. Again, shouldn't take as long as the last few, but we've got some question slides that we're going to have throughout, and Ashley will help facilitate any questions in the chat box or turn your mic on for any questions. So if you have any questions, remember, type them in the chat box there, and Ashley will get this facilitated. Otherwise, when we're done, we'll stick around and we'll have some kind of a Q&A just for anything really. So keep an eye on that. So in just to look at right here, these are the 3 subsections of this rule. It's talking about a bunker and a bunker. It doesn't tell us what a bunker is exactly. That's not found in the rule itself, which is interesting. And it's found in the definition, right? So that's where we're going to see, well, what is a bunker, right? Because there are some areas where if you're by the coast, right, you've got some natural sandy areas or waste areas, as you might call it, or beaches, and you could play the ball off that in a way that's just, it's the general area, right? You can ground your club, you can do certain things that you can't do in a bunker. So we got to look at what a bunker actually is, and that takes us right away to the definition of bunker. And a bunker, and this is, again, those definitions in the back of the book, it tells you exactly what it is. And more importantly, it also tells you what is not part of the bunker. So that's really important. I think in a general sense, we all know, when I point to something, that's bunker, right? We know what a bunker is. Well, this is a very technical breakdown of what it is and what it is not. So simply, a bunker is a specially prepared area of sand, which is often a hollow from which turf or soil has been removed. It says these are not part of the bunker. So again, right there, a specially prepared area of sand, there's maintenance crews that rake bunkers. They put rakes in bunkers for you. They expect you to care for bunkers once you've played out of them, or if someone else hasn't, to maybe go over there and rake some footprints you've seen, and we'll cover that. So again, it's a specially prepared area. It is an area of the course, which we're going to talk about. But again, looking at what a bunker is, here is what a bunker is not. A lip, wall, or face at the edge of a prepared area and consisting of soil, grass, stacked turf, or artificial materials. When I think of stacked turf, I think of in the Open Championship, right? They've got those well bunkers and they're just layered. That's not part of the bunker. It's specifically saying that right here. We don't see that a lot in the States as much. In Colorado, I know TPC Colorado has quite a bit of that, but other than that, there's not a lot of that going on here. Soil or any other growing or attached natural object inside the edge of a prepared area, such as grass, bushes, or trees. Sand that is spilled over or is outside the edge of the prepared area. Again, this is what a bunker is not. And then all other areas of sand on the course that are not inside the edge of a prepared area, such as deserts and other natural sand areas, or areas sometimes referred to as waste areas. So again, a very specific area. It goes, in the second bullet point, it says soil or any growing or attached natural object inside the edge. Again, when you look at the very front, it's specifically saying sand, and it says it 4 times in the definition here. So it's specifically talking about sand. It goes on to say, well, what is sand? And we're going to dive into that real quick. Later on in this definition, we keep saying the word sand, well, what is sand? Well, we know it, but the rules give us a little bit of a lean toward what that is when it comes to what is sand on the golf course. And it says the word sand, as used in this definition, and Rule 12, includes any material similar to sand that is used as bunker material, such as crushed shells. I haven't seen that, but I've heard of it, as well as any soil that is mixed in with the sand. So in a interesting way here, they say sand is any material similar to sand. They're saying sand is sand. So it doesn't really give you a definition of what sand is. So let's take a step out of the rules right quick and look at another definition from Webster's. This is what is sand with regard to this, and we'll talk more on that and what sand is not is more important. So again, I just pulled this out of the dictionary. It says sand is a loose granular material that results from disintegration of rocks, consists of particles smaller than gravel but coarser than silt, and is used in mortar, glass, abrasives, and foundry molds. All that to say is, and we had this, someone asked me this in I think Rule 8 when we talked about restoring conditions. Well, what if you can't tell it's sand? Well, that's kind of part of it. I'm not a geologist. I can't give you this is exactly what sand is, and this is exactly what sand isn't. Somewhere along the line, sand becomes sand and it becomes not sand. So, the way to look at it, and especially if officiating, is to say if you don't know what it is, if I don't know if that's it, then don't touch it. This happened to Rory McIlroy, I think, a few years ago, where he went to pick up a rock and it just disintegrated. Oh, that was a clump of sand. I'm not quite sure how it ended, but in any case, if you don't know, I don't think many people can tell you what sand is exactly and when it becomes not sand. Again, the whole thing is to say, if you don't know what it is, then treat it as sand. And again, we're going to see parts, you can't on the putting green, we know we can move sand, but if it's off the putting green, you say, oh, is that a rock? Just don't touch it. That's the easiest way to look at it. Again, because, I'm not going to ever be able to tell you what sand is and sand is not, other than, when you see it. That's about all we can do on that one. I'm not a geologist. If someone's out there is into sand and rock and all that stuff, then I'd love to hear a better definition. But with the confines of golf, if you don't know, don't touch it. All right, so again, back to bunkers, right, made up of sand. These are one of the 5 areas of the course, and it's the specific area of the course. And we all know what bunkers are, right? We've got them highlighted there. I don't think it's any mystery, when we've got a bunch of green grass and a pit of sand, that's a bunker. That's a specific area of the course. And we cover that specifically here in Rule 12. That's all about bunkers. So the first thing we look at, remember, is our purpose statement for the rule. And this is the beginning of every rule. It's kind of the ethos of the rule and what this rule is about in summary. It doesn't really, again, it's not really rulemaking, but it just is a good intro to look at it before you get into the rule. And it says the purpose of this rule is Rule 12 is a specific rule for bunkers, which are specially prepared areas intended to test the player's ability to play a ball from the sand. To make sure the player confronts this challenge, there are some restrictions on touching the sand before the stroke is made and on where relief may be taken for a ball in a bunker. So that's a very, again, broad scope of what we're going to look at today. Within the purpose of the rule, before it gets that, it kind of touches on what a bunker is, which are specifically prepared areas intended to test the player's ability. And it says, to make sure the player confronts this challenge. So here the rules and the purpose statement is admitting and inferring that bunkers are special, right? They're a challenge to playing the game. There's not many courses that don't have any bunkers. And if they don't, they're unique in that way. Most courses we know there are bunkers out there, and that's an architectural design. They're put in places, that people don't put bunkers 100 yards to the right where it's never going to be in play, and that's just it. They put it in specific areas. It's part of the course design, the course architect. Bunkers are put in specific areas to challenge you. So again, that's why we have certain rules out here to make sure that you confront this challenge. And we're going to see a few more instances of that. But here in the purpose statements, it's kind of inferring, yeah, this is part of playing the game. Sometimes you hit a ball in a bunker and you're in a bad lie, or you've got some sand behind your ball. You can't clear that out. That's part of the challenge. This rule instructs us on how to properly play from a challenging part of the golf course, right? All right, so jumping into the Rule 12.1, when a ball is in a bunker. So the ball is in a bunker when any part of the ball touches sand on the ground inside the edge of the bunker. And again, we're seeing the word sand here, right? So this does not include necessarily temporary water or a part of the bunker that's not defined as bunker, like other ground in the bunker. So it's specifically talking about sand here or the ground. Let's say, again, if sand is blown away and there's hard compact, that's still part of the bunker. But you can't, the balls in the bunker touches sand in the bunker. And again, like we saw, the word sand is used in this definition and Rule 12. So in the confines of this conversation today in Rule 12, it includes any material similar to sand that is used as bunker material, as well as any soil that is mixed in with the sand. So here we're specifically talking about the ball has to be touching sand or is inside the edge of the bunker and rests, in this case, on ground where sand normally would be, like I mentioned, let's say where sand was blown or washed away by wind or water, it's still in the bunker if it's just been blown out or been bottomed out or something, or in or on a loose impediment, movable obstruction, abnormal course condition, or integral object that touches sand in the bunker, or is on ground where sand normally would be. So if your ball is somehow on a movable obstruction, again, we always have to treat the ball as lying in one area of the course. So if your ball is lying on an obstruction, say someone left a towel in the bunker and it's lying on the towel in the bunker, well, we have to treat it as lying in one of the 5 areas. And of course, it's going to be lying in the bunker. You wouldn't say, oh, it's what's in the general area because it's not touching sand. Here, the rules are specifically stating, no, if it's on a loose impediment, and again, in or on infers that it's not touching the sand necessarily. It's on something, but it's in where sand normally would be. It would be touching it. So balls in a bunker in that case. Again, very rare instance. I mean, I don't know how many times I've ever had a ball on or in a loose impediment or movable obstruction in a bunker. Of course, if an abnormal course condition, most commonly for bunkers, that's temporary water, right? If your ball's in temporary water in a bunker, that is in the bunker, right? When we have a specific rule for that, we can take relief for temporary water in the bunker or outside the bunker. And we don't touch on that today. That's Rule 16 conversation. So we're not going to jump ahead. But again, if ball's in water in the bunker, you wouldn't say, oh, it's in water. Again, it's got to be in an area of the course. Therefore, it's in the bunker. There's a part of the ball, if a ball lies on soil or grass or other growing or attached natural objects inside the edge of the bunker without touching any sand, the ball is not in the bunker. And so if part of the ball is in both a bunker and in another area of the course, see Rule 2.2c. So that first part there we're talking about is, if we've got within the thing of the church pews, and we've got a picture coming up, but think of the church pew bunkers, right? If it's on one of the, I guess you'd say the church pew or the grass area, it's not in the bunker because it's lying. It's not lying on any sand. It's lying on turf there. So like we saw earlier, that's not part of the bunker. And again, we have a good picture that shows us that in the rule book here in a minute. But it says, again, if part of the ball is both in a bunker and another area of the course, see Rule 2.2c. Let's go back to that right quick. Like I just said, a ball is always treated as lying in only one area of the course. It can't be in 2. So in a case where it does technically touch 2, we have to say, okay, where does the ball lie? Because that's going to depend on what rules apply and how we can play the ball, how we can potentially take relief, and knowing how to apply the rules there. So in this case, is if part of the ball is in both the general area and one of the 4 specific areas of the course, right? Teeing area, penalty area, bunker, putting green, it is treating as lying in that specific area of the course. So the specific area always overrides the general area. And then going down even more, if part of the ball is in 2 specific areas of the course, meaning if it's in a penalty area, bunker, putting green, or teeing area, it is treated as lying in the specific area that comes first in this order, kind of the hierarchy of where it lies in the course: penalty area, bunker, putting green. So if the ball is lying in both penalty area and a bunker, you kind of saw it if you watched golf this weekend, the Arnold Palmer, there's on hole 17, there's a line painted in the sand on the bunker right in front of the pond. That's a situation where it could very easily, if it's on the line and touching the bunker and the penalty area, it's in 2 areas of the course, but because it's touching the red line, this rule right here says, no, this is in the penalty area. The penalty area rule applies. So very rare instance, but again, this is kind of a little housekeeping note here. All right, so back to the rule here. Again, looking at when we see the ball is in the bunker, or any part of the ball touches sand inside the ground, inside the edge, or is inside the edge. So we're here, if it's inside the edge at all with regard to touching the sand, or on these things, on ground where sand normally would be, or be loose impediment, movable obstruction, or abnormal course condition. Again, going back to the definition, right? What is not part of the bunker? These are not part of the bunker. A lip, wall, or face at the edge of a prepared area and consisting of soil, grass, stacked turf, or artificial materials. Not part of the bunker: soil or near attached growing natural object inside of the edge of the prepared area. Sand that is spilled over or is outside the edge of the prepared area, it's not part of the bunker. A lot of times you see when the sand pro maybe goes in to do the bunker and prepare it, it brings sand in and out, it's spilling over the edge. That's not part of the bunker. In that case, the sand's in the general area, can't move it, don't touch it. And then all other areas of sand on the course that are not inside the edge of a prepared area, such as deserts and other natural sandy areas. And again, like I said, there's a really good picture in the rule book, and this is a good change that the rules have made since pre-2019 and post-2019. There's a lot of pictures, and this is a really good job of saying, okay, here's what we mean when they say, here's the bunker, here's not part of the bunker, and then here is a picture of it. So again, the stacked turf face, right, that top ball that was plugged in, that's a tough lie. That is not part of the bunker, right? That ball in the middle there, that's in the bunker. We know that. That little area, right, that's that little island there of grass, that's not part of the bunker, right? That's resting on grass, natural object there. That ball is not in a bunker. And then lastly, the ball is on the rake somehow. That happened. That ball is in the bunker because it has to be. It can't be in any other area of the course in that case. So again, just to show you, the rules do do a really good job of showing you what is and what is not when the ball is in and not in the bunker. So real quick, just gonna stop. That's 12.1. That's pretty short. I mean, it's not that long. Doesn't even have any interpretations in that rule, so it's pretty short. Any questions on anything we've covered so far? Ashley, do we have any in the chat box or anything that I didn't touch on?
Nothing in the chat yet. If you have questions, send them in, or feel free to unmute yourself. We've got a smaller group today, if you would rather do that.
Okay. So moving on to rule 12.2, this is a bigger part of it. This is what we're going to cover most of today, because again, 12.3, there's not much going on there. 12.2, this is where a lot is going on. So in 12.2, it starts off saying this rule applies both during a round and while play is stopped under rule 5.7a. So you can't go do something during a delay that would breach one of these rules because it's not technically during your round. It's specifically saying this is applicable while play is stopped under 5.7a. The first part is removing loose impediments and movable obstructions. It says before playing a ball in a bunker, a player may remove loose impediments under rule 15.1 and movable obstructions under 15.2. This is a change, right? So pre-2019, if there was a leaf in the bunker, you couldn't pick it up or you'd get a 2-stroke penalty for moving a loose impediment in a bunker. Here, you can move loose impediments or movable obstructions without restriction. We're going to cover a little bit later, more in depth on that, but and we're also not going to cover necessarily the movement of a ball when it comes to these. We're going to wait. These are both covered in rule 15.1 and .2. We're going to cover the movement of the ball later, but we're going to cover specifically here the removing of those when it doesn't affect the ball. It doesn't cause the ball to move. So this includes any reasonable touching or movement of the sand in the bunker that happens while doing so. So it says if you're moving a loose impediment and you touch sand and that it was reasonable in removing the loose impediment or the movable obstruction, there's no penalty. We're going to talk about when you can and cannot touch sand. A lot of times this will happen more so if there's a bunker rake on the ground, you take your wedge and kind of hook it under the bunker rake to pull it up and you accidentally graze sand. Here, again, it says any reasonable touching or movement of the sand of the bunker that happens while doing so, while removing a loose impediment or removable obstruction. So highlight here any reasonable touching or movement of the sand. And what we're going to do, we're going to shift a second to the interpretation, the first interpretation to this rule in 12.2. That kind of goes more into that. It says improvement resulting from removing a loose impediment or movable obstruction from a bunker. It says when removing a loose impediment or movable obstruction from a bunker, sand is often moved as a result of removing the object, kind of like I just said, as long as it's reasonable. And there's no penalty if this improves a condition affecting the stroke, if the actions taken to remove the loose impediment or movable obstruction were reasonable, right? So there's unreasonable as well. And we'll look at that right quick. And then it highlights, 8.1b2, which we're going to take a look at. Again, that mirrors what's actually in the rule. So the interpretation and the rule are talking about the same thing. The rule leads you to the interpretation. The interpretation says, and there's more examples in there, and I didn't want to get out into all of those, but it does kick us back to 8.1b2 to say that, you are allowed, we talked about this first in the second area, in preparing for or making a stroke, a player may take any of these actions and there's no penalty, even if doing so improves the conditions affecting the stroke. Cut out the first one, but number 2 there says take reasonable actions to remove a loose impediment or movable obstruction. So we see it in 12.2, we see it in 8.1. It's going to say it in 15.1 and 15.2. So there's 3 places where it's saying when you reasonably remove a loose movable obstruction, if you move sand and it's reasonable, you're not penalized for that. That's fine. So again, going back to 12.2a, again, let's look at the first part here. It says before playing a ball to bunker, a player may remove loose impediments under Rule 15.1. Well, we're going to look at real quick, what are loose impediments? This is kind of the first time we've seen it with the rules here. So a loose impediment is any unattached, and this is the definition of loose impediment, any unattached natural object, and that's the key right there, is natural object. That's the big thing about discerning between a loose impediment and movable obstruction, which we're going to see, but natural is key. Examples include stones, loose grass, leaves, branches, sticks, dead animals and animal waste, worms, insects, and similar animals that can be removed easily, and the mounds or webs they build, such as worm casts and anthills, and then clumps of compacted soil. So aeration plugs, once they've been plugged and pulled out, those are clumps of compacted soil. Again, like I said, loose impediments, these are natural objects. These occur naturally by nature. We don't have to do, and I say we humans don't have to do anything for these to happen. We don't have to do anything for leaves and branches and pine cones and pine needles and rocks to form. Those are already there. We don't make those. So in a very big way, those are part of the golf course, right? That's part of the, what we see on the golf course. There are restrictions that we'll see about that, but again, defining what a loose impediment is, natural objects are, that's the key phrase there. Going back to the rule, right? So before playing a ball in a bunker, a player may remove loose impediment, natural object, under Rule 15.1, and movable obstructions under 15.2. All right, well, movable obstructions in the definition is simply an obstruction, which is an artificial object, that can be moved with reasonable effort and without damaging the obstruction or the course. So movable obstruction, in the definition of obstruction, we've got these things right here. These are all obstructions. The bottom 3 that I've highlighted, those are more movable obstructions. Those can be moved. Most, commonly you have the bottom one, player equipment, flag sticks, and rakes. Those are movable obstructions. Those are commonly what you're going to see, especially when we talk about bunkers. Rakes, that's a big one. So looking at movable obstructions, those are artificial objects, right? None of these things are man-made, right? Ball washers, bunker rakes, hoses, signs, trash cans, those do not occur naturally in nature. Someone had to make those. That is a man-made thing. That is not part of the golf course in the way that these loose impediments are. These are man-made things, and the rules treat them differently. Here, they're lumped together to say, in any case, you can move them, right? You can always move them in a bunker, rather. Again, we'll talk more about if the ball moves down the line. This is all predicated on, it's not resting against your ball and you make the ball move, right? So again, just as a side-by-side, obstructions are artificial, loose impediments, those are natural. So, if your ball is resting against a Coke can, nowhere in the rules you're going to find, where's the Coke can rule? Where, you got to know to say, okay, what is a Coke can? That is categorized via the definitions under movable obstructions. Now that you're speaking the language of the rules, the definitions, you can apply that and say, 15.2 takes over because a Coke can is a movable obstruction. You're never going to see the word Coke can in the rules of golf, right? So you got to know where that's categorized and stored under. So again, what we can remove in a penalty area, a bunker without penalty, loose impediments, again, right there when she's lifting that leaf, that used to be a penalty. Now, it's very clearly not going to cause her ball to move. She can remove those. That's no problem. And then also movable obstruction. So here, and we hope you do, right? We've got trash essentially in the bunker here. And we've got the scorecard, tin can, and a leaf. So before 2019, you could move the scorecard in the tin can, and that was fine and expected because that's trash. We hope you're helping clean up if you're able to. But then if you move that leaf, that was a 2-stroke penalty, right? So that was a little confusing, I think, sometimes. And, what's the difference between the can and the leaf? Well, like I said, the can is artificial and the leaf is natural. And the rules have made them on a level playing field with regard to removing them from the bunker. So at any point, you can remove a loose impediment or movable obstruction. Again, we're not talking about if it moves the ball. We kind of talked about that a little bit in Rule 9, where ball at rest moved, you got to put it back. Again, this is just simply removing them. This is picking them out of the bunker, totally fine. So looking at Rule 15.1 and jumping up there, in 15.1a, it says the removal of loose impediments. And again, this is where it's mentioning it again. So even though we're in Rule 12, it kind of kicks you to 15.1 and says under 15.1 and 15.2, you can remove loose impediments and movable obstructions. And so it says, without penalty, a player may remove a loose impediment anywhere on or off the course and may do so in any way, such as by using a hand, foot, or club or other equipment. Again, if you're doing it and you touch sand, as long as it was reasonable, we know in 12.2 and then 18.1b2, you're not going to be penalized. And again, it infers you're anywhere on or off the course. So that includes bunkers. So kind of carte blanche, you can remove a loose impediment. It gets more in this rule about, well, what if your ball moved again? We're not going there yet. Just simply removing it, it's in your way, you want to move it, totally fine. Anywhere on or off the course, you can remove a loose impediment. Similarly, in 15.2, it says relief from movable obstructions, but same way, without penalty, a player may remove a movable obstruction, again, artificial object, anywhere on or off the course, and may do so in any way. So again, anywhere on or off the course in a bunker, right? So that's part of anywhere on or off the course. This is just another place. So it says in quite a few places here that you can remove loose impediments or movable obstructions. So again, comparing the two side by side, a movable obstruction and a loose impediment, anywhere on or off the course, you can move that. Penalty area, bunker, those are the big ones that have been changed with loose impediments. General area, teeing area, putting green, you've always been able to do that. But here it's making it, I think, a little simpler by saying anywhere you want to move it, totally fine. There's no restricted area of the course, right? So anywhere you want to move it, that's totally fine. So again, these things are now treated equal right here, right? We hope you move, pick up the trash, obviously. We hope you can move all those and you know that you can do that and get those out of your way in a bunker. Any questions on anything we've covered right there in 12.1 or 12.2a rather?
Robert, can I just ask a couple questions because I'm not up to typing today? This is Jordy, by the way, sorry.
Okay, cool.
So sometimes courses don't maintain their bunkers that great and you have grass or weeds growing in the bunker.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that if a ball is sitting on one of those and not touching the sand, it's not in the bunker?
Well, if it's touching, I mean, if it's, and I think I know what you mean, where the weeds are just like grass is almost growing in there.
In the middle of the bunker.
Right. Yeah. No, it's still in the bunker in that case. I mean, what the rules are kind of talking about is if it's on like an island kind of, if it's just like, and I don't think a ball would come to rest on a weed necessarily. It would be in the bunker still, because typically the big weeds, if it's like flowering or something, that's going to be taken down. But when it's just simply grass growing in the sand, yeah, if it's touching the weed and the sand, it's going to be considered in the bunker in that case, and you're going to have the bunker rules. You can't, unfortunately, do your own weeding, right, and get the weeds out. But your ball's still going to be considered in the bunker in that case.
Even if it's growing into the bunker from the edge of the bunker?
So the edge, meaning like the part that's not considered part of like the lip or anything, and it's growing out of that?
Yeah, into the bunker.
Yeah, I mean, if a plant is growing from not in the bunker, even in the bunker, and it's like a bush or something, and it's growing over the bunker overhanging, and the ball is sitting on that, if it's a large plant or bush, then no, the ball is not in the bunker. It's growing out of the lip. But if it's simply in the bunker and there's weeds around it, and it's just a bunker in disrepair because they haven't had a chance to, keep the weeds down, the ball's still in the bunker. So it's kind of a fine line, I guess, when you look at it like that. But if a ball is, again, if it's growing out of the lip and it's on something and it's not touching the bunker, it's on a plant, we've seen that it's not part of the bunker.
Okay, and just the last question on movable obstructions. If you're in the bunker, you can move them, but that does not include an out-of-bounds stake?
Correct, yeah, that's a good point. Out-of-bounds stakes are not, and when you look at boundary object and integral object and immovable obstruction, in each one of those definitions, it specifically says boundary object, integral object. These are not immovable obstructions. These are not obstructions. So a boundary object in no case is it ever allowed to be moved. So that's easy, I think, as part of the rules, and knowing that whenever you see a white stake, you just can't touch it. There's no reason There's no rule where it allows you to move that. And if you do, like we saw in Rule 8, before you make a stroke, you can correct that and put it back. But yeah, you can never remove an out of bounds stake. That's a good clarification there.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to 12.2b. This is restrictions on touching sand in the bunker, right? So this, in 12.2b, there are 3 little areas we're going to cover here. The first one is when touching sand results in penalty. This is 2, when touching sand does not result in penalty, and it infers that, okay, here, there's parts of, the rules where you can touch the sand, but you're not going to be penalized for it. And in 1, obviously, we are going to be penalized. I think most people know what that is, but 2 is going to be where we don't get penalized for touching sand. It's not carte blanche, you touch sand and you're penalized. There are some exceptions here. There's 6 of them. And then no restrictions after a ball is played out of a bunker. That one's, once you're out, you can kind of do whatever you want, actually, once you're out of the bunker. So the first 2 are when the ball's in the bunker and touching sand, and the third one, once the ball's out, do what you want. For the first part, 12.2b1, when touching sand results in a penalty, this is before making a stroke at a ball in a bunker, a player must not, and again, we're touching sand here, right? It's about sand. Deliberately touch sand in the bunker with a hand, club, or rake, or other object to test the condition of the sand, to learn information for the next stroke. So you can't feel in there. And this happened at the US Am at Bandon Dunes. The player's caddy, which we skipped the caddy rule, but the player's caddy, he was touching and feeling the sand. He was deliberately touching sand in the bunker with a hand to test the condition of the sand, to learn information for the next stroke. The player's caddy that, the player was penalized. So that's a very real life situation that we saw if you were watching the US Am at Bandon this last year in 2020. So again, deliberately touch sand to test the condition. So it's pretty specific here. You can't, and a rake includes it too, right? Hand rake, anything to say, well, is this sand compact? Is it fluffier today? You kind of gain some of that knowledge through your feet, and that's, you can't really do anything about that, right? I mean, if you are really digging in to test the condition, that's not gonna be okay. But if you walk in the bunker and say, oh, this sand doesn't feel too soft, too hard at all, obviously you have to walk to your ball. So there is some information you're going to get by just playing the ball. And we can dig in with our feet, and we'll see that in a minute. But just, that doesn't mean you can't gather information that's or you can see, well, this sand's pretty wet. It's probably pretty compact here. What we're talking about here is deliberately touching sand to test the condition of the bunker for the next stroke. So you can't touch sand in the bunker with a club, and it's got some indentations here, right? In the area right in front of or right behind the ball. I haven't seen anyone put their club in front of a ball in the bunker. More so you see people sometimes just casually, they ground it and take practice swings and stuff. And it goes on to say, except as allowed under Rule 7.1a and fairly searching for a ball under Rule 12.2a and removing a loose impediment or movable obstruction. So like we saw a minute ago, if you're moving a loose impediment behind your ball, that's not going to cause your ball to move. And when you pick it up, while reasonably picking it up, you touch sand. Again, not going to be penalized for that. There's an exception here. And again, in this area, right here, we know this is not okay. We've seen this, every time someone does it, you think, it's not, you can't do that. Again, in a ball in a bunker, you're not allowed to ground your club here. So you can't do that. And the second part, in making a practice swing, that anywhere in the bunker, right? So if you're 5 feet over to the side of your ball and you're making practice swings in the bunker, we know that's not okay. So you can't do this. You're sitting there testing the condition, making practice swings. Can't do that. Again, I think most people know that. And then in the third option here, in making a backswing for the stroke. So when you're pulling your club back to take it away, we covered in 8.1 that, when you're pulling it away, and let's say you break a branch on the swing to be made, as long as you complete the stroke, you're not going to be penalized. In that part of those rules, it says specifically, except for touching sand in a bunker. So we see it again here specifically. In this case, when you're pulling back, you can't drag, if your ball's behind the mound, you can't just clear out a pathway. So when you come through on your forward movement of the stroke, you got a clear path to the ball. We know we can't do that. It says that here. So we've got all 3 of these things. And again, I think these ones are pretty well known. We've got a little video here to show, just to illustrate all of those things in motion, what you can and can't do here.
Some bunker restrictions continue to exist. still not allowed to touch the sand with your club, behind or in front of your ball. When making a practice swing, or when making your backswing.
Right, so all those things we just saw pictures of. You know, I think when we see that, we know that just doesn't look right. And, you know, I think, you know, if you watch golf on TV, when you're watching them play out of the bunker, you know, you see the players always very careful not to do that. And they get the club right underneath the ball, not touching the sand. And you notice on the backswing, they don't pull any sand out either. They're very, you know, any tour player is very, you know, diligent about that. And most competitive players are anyways. People know you can't do that.
Some bunker restrictions continue to exist.
All right, watch that. So again, back to the rule. We've got those three things of what you cannot do. And a very specific thing here, when really dissecting the rules, look at it. In the rule, it says the bunker. Deliberately touch sand in the bunker with a hand club. Touch sand in the bunker with the club. What it's inferring here is touching sand in the bunker you're currently in, not a bunker. So in this case right here, let's look at this. Very technically, okay, the player's playing out of that bunker. If he were to go to that bunker and make practice swings and test the condition of that bunker, that's not prohibited. And that was the thing, I think early on when the rules came out that people caught. It was the old 13-4. You couldn't test a condition of a hazard or any similar hazard, and bunkers were looped into that. And this one right away, people say, oh, well, if there's two bunkers side by side, I can go into one bunker and take practice swings and then go to the bunker I'm actually in and treat that like I'm supposed to. And the answer is, yeah, you can do that. It's not great, you know, for pace of play. If you're in a bunker and you go try to find another bunker and try to splash around in that and feel it out, but it's specifically talking about the bunker that you're in. So it's not saying any bunker, it's saying the bunker. So this is something that I think people caught on again pretty early on with the new rules to say, well, it doesn't say any bunker. And, you know, it took people a sec to say, you know, dive into it and say, actually, yeah, this is a thing now, and you can do this. You don't see it a lot. I mean, even when you watch golf on TV, you don't see players in one bunker going to their bunker and testing it. They just don't do that. So even though they could, they don't. And, you know, again, this is not something I'm saying you should do at all. I'm just saying technically if someone did that, again, we're talking about the bunker that you're in. That's what the rules are inferring here. So that's kind of a little note there that when we peel back, we kind of see here. All right, so the second part, we talked about number one, when touching sand results in penalty. And in number two, we're talking when touching sand does not result in penalty. So here there's instances where you can touch sand in the bunker and you're not going to be penalized. And in those first areas, we've got that protected area in front of and behind the ball. On your backswing, when you take sand out, that's not okay. And then any practice swings, and obviously anything to deliberately test it. So it says, except as covered by one, which is what I just covered, this rule does not prohibit the player from touching sand in the bunker in any other way, including, and there's 6 instances here. Again, what we just covered by one. So those areas are still protected. And we're talking about sand here. So again, it's not necessarily talking about temporary water or loose impediments for movable obstructions. It's talking about the sand. Digging in with the feet to take a stance for a practice swing of the stroke. You know, this is the first thing we all do when we step into a bunker, right? You know, the first thing you do is you dig in a little bit, whether it's a fairway bunker, greenside bunker. I think that's just kind of natural. When you get in, you kind of dig in. And again, the rules are saying, obviously that's part of the game. You're establishing a firm stance. And when you dig in, as long as you're not doing it excessively to build a stance or to, you know, really test the condition there, you're not going to be penalized. And if you gain information from that, say when you dig in, you say, oh, I mean, it's a little soft. That's just, you know, common observation. You're allowed to do that. Obviously, something you have to do to hit the shot. And it's the first thing out of the gate. The rules say that's okay. Smoothing the bunker to care for the course. So if your ball is in a bunker and you know you go in another part of the bunker to smooth sand to care for the course, that's not covered in a condition affecting the stroke. So if it's where your stance is, you say, oh, I'm going to smooth the bunker here to care for the course, you're improving a condition affecting the stroke. We're going to see that at the end of this rule, and I'll get more into it. But if your ball is in a bunker and in another part of the bunker is in disarray, you say, I'm going to be a good steward of the course and rake this bunker to care for it. That's okay. And we see that back in 8.2 and 8.3, and that's an exception there. And we're going to kind of jump back to that here. in a minute, but smoothing bunker to care for the course, you can do that as long as it's not improving a condition affecting the stroke. Placing clubs, equipment, or other objects in the bunker, whether by throwing them or setting them down. You walk into a bunker, you've got a couple clubs. I'm going to use the 60 degree, take your 56, drop it down, throw it in the bunker, that's fine. It says in parentheses, whether by throwing or setting them down. Whenever I see throwing, I always imagine someone just throwing their stuff into the bunker. I mean, don't do that, but it's inferring that you can just toss things down and it's not testing the condition there. Measuring, marking, lifting, or replacing or taking other actions under a rule. A common situation about this, and for whatever reason, it always sticks in my head. There was a WGC event a long time ago, and it was Rory and Dustin Johnson were in the bunker, and their ball was this far apart from each other in the bunker. Well, obviously, one of them had to move their ball, so whoever was away was going to play first. The other player marked and measured their one club length to the side. They picked their ball up, don't clean it, set it down. But in that process, they were measuring under a rule to move their ball because it was interfering with play. And if he were to touch the sand and doing that when it was reasonable or accidental, they're not going to be penalized for it because he's measuring, marking, and lifting his ball out of the way so that Rory could play, and that's okay if he touched the sand in that case. Leaning on a club to rest, stay balanced, or prevent a fall. This is not recommended. I wouldn't recommend leaning on a club because it's just going to look weird and someone's going to say something about it. Technically, if you're just in the bunker waiting to play and you're back behind your ball and you're leaning on a club, that's, okay. Obviously, to stay balanced or prevent a fall, if you're going into the bunker and you use your club as a kind of a cane to stabilize you, you're not going to be penalized for that. I believe the old rules, that concept was in there. But leaning on a club to rest, that's certainly a new addition. Again, doesn't look great, not recommended, but again, here it says you can do that. And then striking the sand in frustration or anger. Again, not recommended either, but if you hit a shot and you slam your club down and your ball, let's say you hit it and you top it up through the bunker, it's still in the bunker 10 yards ahead of you and you smash your club down, rules are going to say, well, no, you're not testing the sand or touching the sand in a inappropriate way there that's going to be testing it. Striking the sand in frustration or anger, pretty obvious when people are doing that. That's a pretty clear sign. So here's showing the rules. They allow that. Again, not recommended, but if you did that, you're not going to be penalized. Again, in those 6 specific instances. However, let's remember, but the player gets the general penalty if his or her actions in touching the sand improve the conditions affecting the stroke in breach of Rule 8.1a. And it says see also Rule 8.2 and 8.3 for limitations on improving or worsening other physical conditions to affect play. So even so, and the way I look at this is while it says, yeah, you can lean on your club, if you do this in a protected area, right? Let's say you lean on your club in the area just behind your ball or in front of your ball, this doesn't get you off the hook to say, oh, well, it says I can lean on my club. Yes, you can, but you would get the general penalty if, when touching the sand and leaning on your club, improves a condition affecting the stroke, so the lie or area of intended swing. So when you do this, you need to be careful. If you strike the sand in frustration or anger right behind your ball and it makes this big crater that improved your line of your area of intended swing, the rules say you're going to get the general penalty for that. So, it says kind of proceed with caution. You still got those protected areas or conditions affecting the stroke. Again, in here, highlighting the word improve, to alter one or more of the conditions affecting the stroke for a gained advantage. And then the conditions affecting the stroke, which going back to 8.1, remember those conditions affecting the stroke we talked about in the first installment of this was, the action area, right? Where's your golf taking place? The lie, intended stance, intended swing, line of play, and relief area where a player might drop the ball. So again, looking back at this, in all these things, these 6 things we see we can do, it says, if any of you doing these things, again, leaning on your club right behind the ball, while it says you can do that, again, it doesn't mean carte blanche, just do whatever you want. No, I improved my lie because it said I could lean on my club. No, you're going to get the general penalty because of that. And again, that's, 2 strokes in stroke play and loss and match play. And then the second part there, that see also rules 8.2 and 8.3 for limitation on improving or worsening other physical conditions to affect the stroke. In 8.3 or 8.2 rather, it says there's an exception to the rule. It says, 8.2 is covering not conditions affecting the stroke. So it's not covering if you're improving anything outside of your action area, right? So this is all 8.1, the lie, the stance, area. 8.2 is all the other things, a future maybe condition affecting the stroke. So here, when we look at 8.2, and I should have made a slide that kind of brought that up, and I don't think I did. But the exception is if you were to rake a bunker to care for the course, that's okay. So in a very over the top instance, if you're playing and there's a bunker not on your line of play, but off, and this is not 100 yards up or anything. If you're chipping and there's a bunker over to the side, and you say, oh boy, if I go rake that, because it's in disrepair, right? I'm caring for the course. You're not going to be penalized, even though you might say, oh, well, maybe my next stroke, if the green carried it over there, it might help me out. If you're doing it and it's not a condition affecting the stroke, it's one of those things from 8.2. If you go over there and rake it to care for the course, there's an exception, 8.2 and 8.3, that says replacing divot or caring for the course, raking a bunker, you're not going to be penalized. That's an exception there. So if you're standing there and there's a bunker in disrepair and you go rake it while you're waiting, and it's, again, off your line of play and you hit it into that bunker, you're not penalized there because you were doing it to care for the course. Again, when we look at it in the context of 8.2, a little easier, and I might just pull that up separately just to show if I haven't put a slide up here. But again, it's one of those things where when caring for the course and you're not improving a condition affecting the stroke, you can go rake a bunker to care for the course because it's in disrepair. Now, if it's a totally fine bunker and you're going there to rake it to feel it, that's a little different, if you're in the bunker. But if you're not in the bunker and it's just, oh, there's some footprints over there, I'm going to do my due diligence in raking it, that's okay, right? So that, 8.2, caring for the course, that trumps 8.2, but doesn't trump 8.1, meaning, caring for the course does override. And that's again an 8.2. So caring for the course is, the rules aren't going to penalize you for trying to, repair a bunker off to the side and then your ball subsequently goes in. You were doing that before that happened and you were doing it to care for the course. So the last part, and this is, again, not as much going on here. I'm sorry, the third part here. There's no restrictions after ball is played out of the bunker, right? So after ball in a bunker is played and is outside the bunker, the player may, again, this is all after, right? So you've played a shot, it's out of the bunker, your ball's no longer in that bunker. Again, the bunker you're in. You can touch the sand of the bunker without penalty under Rule 12.1b. So, for instance, you're in a bunker and you stall a shot across the green and ends up in another bunker, you could say, and do a practice stroke again and try to mimic that stroke you hit because you just missed a shot. You can do that. The ball is out of the bunker. You can take practice strokes in the bunker. Now you can touch sand in the bunker. We see that a lot. I saw it this weekend on TV a couple times. Or player out of the bunker and then didn't hit a good shot and kept making the swings in the bunker because the ball's out. This covers that. Smooth sand of the bunker to care for the course without penalty under 8.1a. So once your ball is out, you can rake, and we hope you do, obviously. And so this is true even if the ball comes to rest outside the bunker and the player is required or allowed by the rules to take stroke and distance relief by dropping a ball in a bunker. So you're in a bunker, let's say, and you hit it and you hit it out of bounds, right? You hit it over the green, it goes over into a fence, that's out of bounds. The rules require you to take stroke and distance. Well, at this point, the ball is outside the bunker. So what you can do is you can rake the bunker and prepare it as it should be and fix it, and then take your stroke and distance relief and drop it. So here are the stipulations on preparing an area you're going to drop, maybe under 8.1, are overridden by this. So your ball's out of the bunker, do what you need to do. Oh, ball, even if you're taking stroke and distance, or you're playing a provisional even. You can rank the bunker, re-prepare it. If the ball is played out, then drop it. And again, it says it right here. The player is required stroke and distance or allowed provisional by the rules to take stroke and distance relief by dropping a ball in the bunker and then the sand of the bunker is on the player's line of play for the next stroke or outside the bunker. So there's a specific interpretation, 8.1b6, that we're going to look at in that last little bullet point. The sand is on the player's line of play for the next stroke from outside the bunker. You can rake that. You can prepare that. So 8.1b6 after a ball in a bunker is played and is outside the bunker, rules 8.1b9 and 12.2b3 use, which is what we're at, 2b3, use care for the course to allow the player to restore the bunker to the condition that it should be in, even if restoring improves the conditions affecting the stroke, line of play. This is true if the player's action is deliberately taken both to care for the course and to improve the conditions affecting the stroke. An example, a player's ball comes to rest in a large bunker near putting green, not being able to play towards the hole. He or she plays out backwards toward the teeing area, and the ball comes to rest outside the bunker. In this case, the player may smooth the areas that he or she had altered as a result of playing the ball, including footprints getting to the ball, and may also smooth any other areas of the bunker. So if this bunker is in total disrepair, the player could smooth all of it because, hey, I got to play over this bunker, and maybe I hit it in there. And the rules are saying once you've played out, you can do what you need to. And this says whether created by the player or those that were already present when the player arrived to play from the bunker. So once the ball's out, kind of do what you want to do. So we look at taking relief in this situation. Once the ball is played out of the bunker, right? So when we look at played out of the bunker, we've got, and we don't cover it much today, but we've got that new rule, right, where if your ball's in a bunker, you can take it outside the bunker for an unplayable for 2 penalty strokes in Rule 19. And when it says, no restrictions after a ball is played out of a bunker also infers that taking relief out of the bunker once the ball has been removed from the bunker. And this is one of the interpretations here in 12.2b. The player is allowed to smooth sand in a bunker to care for the course after taking relief outside the bunker. So under Rule 12.2b3, a player may smooth sand in a bunker to care for the course without penalty under Rule 8.1a after a ball is played out of that bunker, what we just looked at. The term played out of the bunker in Rule 12.2b3 also includes taking relief outside the bunker. So again, once the ball is outside of the bunker, the ball is in the bunker, now it's outside, whether by you played it or took relief, this applies. You can rake the sand as you need to once that ball is outside of the bunker from once it was in there. And then again, your footprints, someone else's footprints, doesn't matter. For example, as the player decides to take unplayable ball relief outside a bunker for a penalty of 2 strokes under Rule 19.3b, back on line relief, but I just mentioned there a little bit. This is before dropping a ball using the back on line relief procedure outside the bunker, or after dropping a ball, but before making his or her next stroke, the player's smooth footprints in the bunker on the line of play. 12.2b3 applies, and there is no penalty. So whether you, and this is all just a long way to say, whether you play it or take relief out of a bunker, you were in a bunker, now you're outside, whether you're dropping it back on that spot, whether it's on your upcoming line of play, whatever. Once you're out, you can fix that bunker and repair it, even if it improves the condition affecting the stroke in 8.1. And certainly that applies if it was 8.2 and affecting another condition affecting the stroke, or not a condition affecting the stroke. So once you're out, you can do whatever you need to there. And we hope you do. Once you're out, yeah, please rake the bunker. So it's provided that the player intended to take relief outside the bunker, there would be no penalty, even if the player smoothed the bunker before dropping the ball outside the bunker. Again, that's just a little added clarification there. All right, so this is what I was talking about earlier, and I did include it in the presentation here. So 8.2, other conditions affecting the stroke. So let's look at 8.2 real quick, and this is going to, I think, make more sense when sort of looking at the rule. So the player's deliberate actions to alter other physical conditions to affect the player's own ball at rest or stroke to be made. So prohibited actions to alter other physical conditions. The exception here, and this is what we're looking at, is actions to care for the course. So there is no penalty under this rule if the player alters any such other physical conditions to care for the course, such as smoothing footprints in a bunker or replacing a divot in a divot hole. So like I said earlier, if there's a bunker that's not on your line of play and you go over there to care for the course, you're not violating 8.2, even if you're doing it to say, well, hey, maybe, if my ball catches a slope and rolls over to that bunker that is not in my line of play, it would be nice if it was in a good lie and there's footprints everywhere. I'm going to rake those footprints to care for the course, and that overrides anything that 8.2 could prohibit by caring for the course, and specifically it says smoothing footprints in a bunker or replacing a divot in a divot hole, and then your ball happens to go over there. You're not breaching Rule 8.2 for improving other physical conditions. So that's what this is saying here. So this does not override your condition affecting the stroke. So if your ball hit your ball into footprints and there's footprints all around your ball where your stance and swing might be, and you say, oh, I'm going to care for the course, that does not override what would be considered a condition affecting the stroke in 8.1, but 8.2, other physical conditions affecting the stroke, you can care for the course by raking a bunker. So very good, thing to delineate between there. Still have those protected conditions affecting the stroke. But anything outside of that, like we see here, 8.2, as long as you're caring for the course, you can rake that bunker. And then back to the rule in 12.2b3. So after a ball and is outside the bunker, again, just to reiterate, you've played it either or taken relief out once it's out of the bunker. You can do what you need to here, care for the course. Hope you do, obviously. Lastly, but if a ball played from the bunker comes back into the bunker, or the player takes relief by dropping a ball in the bunker, the restrictions in 12.2b1 and 8.1 again apply to that ball in the play in the bunker. So again, in that first area, it's once it's out of the bunker. In this case, you hit it, goes up the slope, comes back down in the bunker, ball's in a bunker again. You're going over there, so the ball rolls back in the bunker. You're not allowed to take practice swings because we've got a new situation, and you now have a ball in play in a bunker. And we saw earlier, you can't take practice swings for a ball in a bunker. So this is clarifying if you make a stroke and it wasn't successful. And again, this is all, and it's kind of lined up right there. The bunker, the bunker, the bunker, that same bunker. So it's specifically and singularly talking about that bunker that you're in. Those continue to apply if the ball's still in it. And then just to wrap up all of this is the general penalty. So if you take a practice swing or if you ground your club in a bunker, any of those prohibited actions and you're penalized under this rule, it's the general penalty. It's going to be 2 strokes in stroke play or loss of hole in match play. So we're going to skip questions. We're almost done. We got questions in about 2 seconds. But this last part, 12.3, specific rules for relief for a ball in a bunker. We've got when a ball's in a bunker, specific relief rules may apply in these situations. So interference by an abnormal course condition, 16.1c. Interference by a dangerous animal condition, 16.2. And then an unplayable ball, 19.3. So, what it's saying here is, this isn't necessarily rulemaking. It's saying if you've got an unplayable ball in a bunker, that's covered by 19.3. If you've got a dangerous animal condition, that's covered by 16.2. Abnormal course condition, 16.1. So it's saying these rules have specific bunker instances, but those are made elsewhere when we're talking about abnormal course conditions and talking about dangerous animal conditions and talking about unplayable balls. So that kind of kicks you out. So that's 12.3. And like I said, there's really not much there. It just directs you elsewhere. And with that, we've come to the end of the rule. So again, 12.2 was the big part of the rule. 12.1 kind of sets you up, when your ball's in a bunker. 12.2 says, okay, now that your ball's in a bunker, here's when you can touch sand or when you can't touch sand. And then once your ball's out, what you can and can't do. So that kind of covers Rule 12 today. Again, if we have any questions, Ashley in the chat, we can get to those, or let's do those first, and then if you want to turn your mic on and ask a question, let's do that. I'm not going anywhere. If you've got questions about anything else that's just not to do with bunkers, that's fine too. But we'll just open that up now.
All right, we've got a couple in the chat here. The first one: bunker completely surrounds the green. Player hits his shot that flies over the green and comes to lie back in the bunker. Is the entire green considered the bunker? And would the player be allowed to rate where the first shot was played before going to play his next shot?
So the ball is imagine there's island green, and the player plays from bunker to bunker, but that bunker is technically connected to one same bunker.
Correct.
Yeah. So even though the ball is still in the bunker, we see that in 8.2, that exception, and to care for the course, you're allowed to rake the bunker where you just played out of. It's not going to say, oh, you can't touch it till you're done. Obviously, if you went shot, you were going to rake the bunker, you have to go back and forth. So if you hit it from over the island green or whatever into the green, you can rake where you just played out of before playing the next stroke, because you're caring for the course in this case. If it was another bunker, it's again a lot easier. But yeah, if it's the same bunker, again, by caring for the course here, and you're not improving a condition affecting the stroke, then that's going to be fine. That would fall under 8.2. That's not a condition affecting the stroke, and the exception 8.2 would apply there, and you could rate that and care for the course.
All right, next question. Ball has come to rest in the bunker on the sand liner. Is the liner an abnormal course condition under Rule 16.1c, but would the player get free relief?
That kind of depends. I mean, and the reason I say that is that's actually a specific instance on a lot of hard cards. The USGA, the CGA, the Colorado Open here locally, I believe they all treat liners and bunkers as integral objects. So it's hard to answer that because it's kind of outside of what we're talking about. I guess tradition or straight up, I mean, it would be considered part of the bunker. And I think that's why a lot of places do say that's an integral part of the course. And you're going to see that on a lot of hard cards. Again, I don't have mine ready to really read it, but typically it's going to be an integral part of it, meaning you don't get relief from that typically because it'll be defined as an integral part of the course.
Okay, and one more in the chat here. And the reference is to diagram 12.1, where the ball is embedded in the face of the bunker. The player decides to take relief for embedded ball. Is the bunker part of the relief area, or is the nearest point of relief in the general area adjacent to the bunker?
Yeah, so that's a good point. If the ball's embedded in looking at the diagram here in the stacked turf face, let's say, right, the little kind of the icing there, if it's embedded in there, we've seen that's not part of the bunker. Therefore, the ball is in the general area. If your ball is in the general area and it's embedded, unless there's a local rule in play prohibiting it to fairway height or less, which is usually not the case, if it's embedded there in the general area, then your relief area is also in the general area. So your reference point is the spot directly behind where the ball is embedded, and you get one club length. The caveat is that the relief area is the general area. So if you're looking at that diagram, and let's say, again, you're imagining that, here's the reference point, and you've got your relief area right there. If that is all in the bunker, then you're actually not entitled to relief, because relief under the correct context of how you take it doesn't exist. There is no part in the general area. So in that case, you're either playing the ball as it lies or taking it unplayable, and you can do 2 club lengths and you could drop it in the bunker, or back on the line, dropping either in the bunker or behind the bunker on the grass. So that it very much depends on angles, right? So if you've got an angle where no closer to the hole, that 1 club length gets you a little sliver of turf, general area, then you can use that little area to drop the ball in. If there's just there's in your relief area, direct, and again, it's very literal, directly behind the ball. If none of that is in the general area, then if you drop it there, that's in a wrong place. So you have to see the angle of it, but you wouldn't be dropping a ball in that bunker for free in this case. If you did, you'd be proceeding under an unplayable ball in that case. But so it's hard to show without seeing it. It's amazing how much that question gets asked. I mean, people ask it. I mean, so people are pretty attentive to it, that it could happen. I've never had a ball embed into the side of a bunker like that, but apparently it does. We get a lot of questions about that one. So there might even be a clarification about that actually in the back of on the website that talks about an embedded ball in that case, but hopefully that answers the question.
Hey, Robert, this is Tom.
Hey.
Hey, so I have a question. I was in a bunker the other day and I thought it was a twig.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to pick it up to move it, and it was actually a root still attached. Where am I now?
Oh, okay. So it was a root growing in the bunker.
Yep.
That's dangerous. So you're allowed to poke and prod and move natural objects, and that's covered in 8.1. So if you go to pick up the twig and that's a root, if you've lifted it out of the ground or something, you need to recreate it and put it back, and usually that's not the case. Usually when you tug on it, almost instantaneously, you see, oh, that's a root. I need to leave that be. And the rules, and there's a interpretation of Rule 8 that says you are allowed to poke and prod in a bunker to see if there's an immovable obstruction or something, or anywhere on the course rather. So you can touch that to see if it's loose, and you see, oh, that's not loose, that's embedded in the ground, that's part of the ground. You just got to leave it be. So by touching it, that doesn't necessarily penalize you. If you were to rip it out of the ground, another issue. But if you say, oh, that's a twig, and you pick it up, and okay, got to leave it be, it's part of the course, we're not gonna touch that. And just by touching it or establishing what it is, you're not going to be penalized for that.
So it was lying directly behind my ball. So when I picked it up, I went to go, it was like, oh, it's attached. Do I have to put it right back behind the ball? or can I move it to the side or anything?
No, you need to put it back to where it was. And let me just read that real quick. It's on 8.1. Move a natural object to see if it is loose. And this is, sorry, 8.1b, number 11. Says, preparing for making a stroke, a player may take any of these actions, and there's no penalty, even if doing so improves the conditions affecting the stroke. So in your case, I think 11 would fit to say, move a natural object, root, to see if it is loose, or we thought it was a twig. But if the object is found to be growing or attached, it must stay attached and be returned as nearly as possible to its original condition. So in that case, yeah, if you pick it up, you need to get it back to where, in your best estimate, it was, and that's more of an honor thing, which you'll do your best to get it back, but get it back to where it was when you first tried to establish what that was, or move a natural object to see if it was loose. So that's pretty well covered, I think, by 8.1b11 there, if you want to read that.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
I'm surprised you're in a bunker, though. Usually, I don't see any bunkers, but.
Oh, thanks.
Got another one in the chat here, Robert. I take a stroke in the bunker and my ball rolls back into the hollow I just created from that first stroke. Do I have any options, or do I play it as it lies?
Yeah, so you make a stroke and ball goes up, rolls back into the crater, right, you just made. You're playing it as it lies. That's the same thing as if you hit a ball into a bunker and it went into someone's footprint. That's just too bad, right? And this is not with any COVID things or local rules in effect, obviously. But yeah, if you make a swing and it comes back in your footprint, swing from that's tough luck, and you're gonna have a harder bunker shot probably coming up.
All right, nothing else has come into the chat, Robert, but again, if anyone has questions you'd like to unmute, go ahead.
Any questions just not related to Rule 12 that you just have for some reason? Anybody?
Robert, this is Dana.
Hey, Dana.
I have laryngitis.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry as I struggle through this question, which is really an interplay between 15.2 and 16.3, but it came to mind in our discussion today about movable obstructions in the bunker. In my world, if there is any ball on that golf course that is not mine, and I take a stroke at it, even if I know it's a range ball, I've hit the wrong ball, correct?
Right,
But
yes.
But is not that golf ball movable obstruction? And under 15, you just said could be removed in any way. So what do I do if I have a player who says, oh, we were just walking down the fairway, I saw that, well, in our discussion today, there is a range, I think it's maybe at South Suburban, at the back side of the range, there's a bunker. So now there's a range ball in there. Players walking in to get his or her ball, they just whack the range ball knowing full well it's not their ball. Is this a wrong ball penalty? Is this a movable obstruction removed in any way? Maybe we wait till Rule 15. I don't know.
No, it's a good question, and you're really digging in there to get the answer, which there's a lot going on in that one. So first of all, a stray ball, right, is a movable obstruction, and that's under the definition of movable obstruction, and rather the interpretation of that. So if your ball is resting up against a range ball or a stray, just loose ball that someone abandoned, right, an abandoned ball, it says, you can move that, and if your ball moves, you put it back. That's a movable obstruction. Again, it lists more of an abandoned ball. If it's your opponent's ball in match play, that's not an abandoned ball. That's their ball in play. That's a different thing. That's covered under a different rule. So in your case, that really is not covered under playing a wrong ball. That I would say is more covered under making a practice swing, right? So if there's a loose ball in the bunker, and when it says remove in any way, that's a very good catch there. If someone made a stroke and say, oh, I removed it in any way, that's not going to hold water. Removing it in any way infers you're kicking it, moving with your hand, moving it with a club. If a player makes a swing at a ball, so if in I guess it depends on what they're doing. If they just straight up play a wrong ball and make a stroke at it and say, oh, that was the wrong ball, that's covered by 6.3. But if they're just doing it like as a practice swing, right, which is kind of what it sounds like she did, right? She just said, oh, I'll get this out of here and makes a practice swing at it. That could be considered practice during a hole or playing another ball during a hole, which would be actually considered, that's a different rule. It's still going to be a penalty, but it's not going to be a wrong ball penalty necessarily. So, and then that one gets a little gray because, if I'm just walking up and there's a ball that spilled over from the range and I just take a club and kind of just flick it back to get it back to where it needs to go, I'm not going to be penalized for it. But if I, put my club down and set up and I'm working on my alignment and I, like I'm hitting an actual range ball, that's going to be a 2-stroke penalty for making a practice stroke during the hole, if that makes sense.
But if the player says, I was just removing the movable obstruction in any way, I don't know. I got wrapped up in that when we were discussing those 3 words. I have missed as many times as I read that rule.
That's a good point. I mean, in any way,
that means I could
do what?
I'm saying any way would suggest I could take a full-on stroke, practice swing or not at it.
Yeah, no, and the way to read that, and I get where you're coming from, and sounds like, and I already know you're a lawyer, so that makes sense that you saw it that way, because you read into it a little bit more, which is good. I think the way you should look at it is remove it anyway, except in making a stroke at it. That's again, that could be, I get the argument, and that could say, oh, well, I removed it anyway by making a stroke at it. Well, again, if she was playing it and making a stroke at it to, again, intend to play that ball, that's a wrong ball. But if she's just doing it to, again, just practice, and I'm looking for where it's covered.
Okay, so, but then let me ask you this. If we're practice swinging in the bunker, we're in big trouble. So now if this errant ball is sitting in the bunker and all she's doing is hitting it back into the range and claiming it to be a practice swing, now we've got to deal with Rule 12, correct?
Yeah, and what I would say in that case, if a player did do that, right, and we established that it was a practice swing, we would consider that practicing. It wouldn't be considered testing the condition. Even if we did, we would kind of wrap that up into 1.3C4 into saying one instance broke 2 rules. One rule in this case would apply, so she wouldn't get 4 penalty strokes in that case. And so the rule that it's going to be covered under is Rule 5.5A, which says, and again, you make a good point. A stray ball is a movable obstruction, but like we've kind of seen, the golf ball can have different statuses. So while it is a movable obstruction, it's also a golf ball, and I think 5.5 would take precedence in this case, meaning while playing a hole, and this I think is what your situation is going to be like, a player must not make a practice stroke at any ball on or off the course. These are not practice strokes. A practice swing made with no intent to strike a ball, meaning I'm just swinging next to my ball and I accidentally hit a ball that was buried. That's not one. Hitting a ball back to a practice area or to another player when done solely as a courtesy. So that's where it's going to hang on. If she was just doing it as a courtesy, just to get it out of there, to move it, she's not going to be penalized. But if she did it as an actual, like, oh, I want to feel out this next shot, so I'm going to play this loose ball and I'm going to cover myself, and by calling it removing a movable obstruction in any way, while clever, that's not going to hold water. We're going to say, no, you made a practice stroke while playing a hole, even though she did remove a movable obstruction, which is an abandoned golf ball, a range ball. It's going to fall more under 5.5A because what she was doing in removing the movable obstruction, abandoned ball, was making a practice stroke. So that's really what it hinges on. You'd say, well, why did you do that? And she'd say, oh, well, it was just in the way. I just wanted to get it out of here. Typically you're just going to, kind of flip at it like that. But if a player is setting up and working on their mechanics in doing this courtesy, it's a little bit of a gray area, admittedly. But, I think we all know what it looks like to do it as a courtesy. We just kind of knock it out of the way or kick it or throw it. And to avoid any appearance of evil, maybe you don't use your club to knock a range ball back to the driving range, because someone could say, oh, 5.5A, that applies. And I've had people call me about that, and I say, look, it comes down to why do they do it? If it's solely as a courtesy and there wasn't any malicious intent to make a practice swing, we'd say you're not penalized. But if they're practice swinging to make a practice stroke at an abandoned ball, 5.5a is going to cover that. So while clever, that's not going to get them off the hook. That's a clever way to look at it, though.
Thanks.
Does that help?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just say to that person, just say, hey, next time, just pick it up and throw it. You're not going to be penalized for that because you are, in a very little sense, removing a movable obstruction. And if it was against your ball and it caused the ball to move, you'd put the ball back. We cover that in 15.2. But that practice swing, that's covered by 5.5a. And that's what, if she's making a practice stroke, that's going to cover it. She's not going to wiggle out of saying, oh, well, I was removing a movable obstruction in any way. It's clever, but that's not going to hold up.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions there that just related to anything? And Dana, just as a question, is that something that you thought of, or your other player, is that something that she tried to?
No, today as you were speaking about removing the movable obstruction in any way, I started thinking about other occasions where players, find an abandoned ball and take a whack at it. And then there's always this discussion about, and I'm talking more in casual play. Yeah. I have not seen this actually in competition, but where I'm repeatedly telling people, you're better off not taking a swing at any ball on any course that is not yours. Yeah. And then as you were talking about the movable in the bunker, I was reminded of seeing range balls in a bunker and thinking I could very easily see people getting in there and hacking them out of there, knowing that it wasn't their ball and saying, yeah, it was just a range ball. So that in any way is what really kind of threw me off. And that was very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, no, and it's a really good question because, in any way you might infer, oh, well, the stroke is any way. And, what it's hard to point to that and because it does say in 15.2, it says in may do so in any way. Again, it's inferring that, I think that there's a difference in removing the movable obstruction and making a swing at it. In golf, it's all about the swing, right? So a swing at a ball, that's a very deliberate act. And when we look at removing a movable obstruction, I think while an abandoned ball is a movable obstruction, it's talking about rakes or penalty area stakes or a scorecard or a tin can or kind of the things we looked at earlier. You're not going to make a stroke at a rake to get it out of the way. You're going to, use your foot, your club, your hand. I think that's the any way they're talking about. It is the any way they're talking about, but it's a good point. But okay, and maybe this is going to reveal a little bit of ignorance on my part. But if we're talking rule 6, in my very black and white world, if there was a stroke made at any ball other than the player's, irrespective of what direction the player lined up, to me, that's a wrong ball. Is that not true? Do we have to look at this to say, oh, well, the player was hitting the ball due west and the whole plays south, couldn't possibly have been intending to make a stroke at that ball? Maybe I've condensed this to way too simple of an analysis. No, I think you're looking at it with a really unique lens there by looking at it very black and white. And that's helpful to talk through that and kind of think through that, I think. So yeah, in a case where if we're playing south and a player hits the ball west, again, when we look at this rule, again, 5.5a, it says hitting a ball back to a practice area or to another player when done solely as a courtesy is not a practice stroke. And again, practice stroke is the key word. Again, a stroke is that forward movement of the club to hit a ball. That's so that means it's not a practice stroke, nor is it a stroke. Right, exactly. When it says this is not a practice, when done solely as a courtesy, in the same way, if I hit a ball that might have been out of bounds, and so I'm gonna hit a provisional, and then my provisional is in the middle of the fairway, and then I go over and I find my ball just in bounds. Okay, my provisional ball is now
not in play, and you're over there in the middle, I'll say, hey, Dana, can you send that back over? And you say, yeah, sure. And you just kind of whack at it over toward me. You're not playing a wrong ball because you're not playing a practice stroke because you're returning that ball to me solely as a courtesy, right? So in that case, yeah, you're not going to be playing a wrong ball, but you're returning a ball, and it's not a practice stroke either because you're giving a ball back to me or putting a ball back on the range as a courtesy. I always tell players, like you said, don't ever make a swipe at a ball unless it's your ball, even if it is at doing this, because then it does pull in someone who's saying, oh no, that was a practice stroke. You're penalized. Again, then that brings in, well, why did you do it? What, was it solely as a courtesy? So I think there's some qualifying factors. If a player sets up over a ball and plays a wrong ball, we're relying on the player, as the rules do, to say, did you just play a wrong ball? Meaning, did you just play a stroke at that ball with the intention of playing your ball, and you made it and you hit the wrong ball in that case?
Right. Was
So
your intention to get whatever ball you were hitting into that hole?
Exactly. And
That's helpful.
An honest question, and to say, and the rules expect the player to say, yeah, I totally messed up. That was a Titleist 4. I was playing a Titleist 4. I didn't look at it very much, but then now I'm on the green and it's got another marking on it. So that was a wrong ball. That was purposeful. You purposely said, I'm going to hit this ball, like you said, to try to get as close to the hole as I can, theoretically. And the rules are going to say, yeah, you need to recognize when you've played a wrong ball, and you know what a wrong ball is, and you know what a practice stroke is. So if you did do this and you took a 9-iron and just kind of popped a range ball back to the driving range, and you did that solely as a courtesy, and someone said, hey, Dana, you can't do that. You said, no, I can, because I did it solely as a courtesy. Again, you bring up in potential to bring up a situation where it could be bad. So again, we recommend you don't do that, and you seem to be on top of that. So that's not recommended procedure.
Thank you.
Yeah, hope you feel better.
Yeah, hope I get my voice back.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or anything? Okay. Well, again, thanks everyone for hanging out and looking at Rule 12 today. Next week we're doing Rule 13. That's a bigger one. That's the putting green, the flag stick. You can play your whole round and you never hit it into a bunker, so you don't need to worry about this rule, right? But if you play 18 holes, theoretically, you're going to play 18 putting greens. You're going to have 18 flag sticks to deal with. So that one, there's a lot going on, and that one's an important one. And that's what we really do whenever we have our rules seminars that are just general, like an hour or 2 hour. The putting green is obviously a very special place. It's your target. The flag stick is even in a smaller sense your target. So there's a lot going on with those rules. So that one we'll cover pretty in depth next week. That'll be a big one, but a good one, because again, it's very important, because the putting green, it's the goal, it's the aim on every time you tee it up. So we'll have a lot on that one. So again, thanks everyone for hanging out. And if you have any questions, my email's on the website, and we'll post this here later today or tomorrow. But thanks for coming out. Remember, we've got our schedule online, and then this weekend we start doing these 2-hour rule seminars, which are repeats of common rule situations, dropping, putting greens, flag sticks. Not as in depth as this. I mean, we spent an hour in Rule 12 today. When we cover bunkers in these weekend seminars, it's going to be like 10 minutes. It's going to be, we're not going to dissect the rule. It's going to be basic kind of gameplay and looking at a little bit of what we looked at. You can't ground your club, you can't take practice swings, things like those. So if you're interested in that, or have someone who's interested, these weekend ones that we're going to be doing are ones that similarly I would be doing at a club, which we're obviously not doing now in person, to say, let's cover a wide variety of things, not getting too deep, but covering, okay, your ball's on a cart path, your ball's in a penalty area, ball's out of bounds. What are we doing here for that? So it's more of a condensed, simpler version, but still covers a lot of stuff. So if you're interested in that, or have someone who is, those will be starting up this weekend and every other weekend for the next 4 weeks or so. So again, thanks for everybody for coming out, and we will see you next week. Thanks.